when you're starting to feel any sort of pain, it's usually from a resistance to reality. And through that resistance to reality, through an expectation or an attachment to how something should be, instead of just being like, what is this here to teach me? What is this here to show me?
Hi, Katya. I'm so excited that you're here today. Thanks for joining. Welcome to All Over Again podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you. It's been a while. So I feel like we always get into so much in the pre-show.
Yes.
I need to bring that into the actual show. So you've been sharing that you've been reconnecting lately with HeyMama members, and maybe just share a little bit about what you've been up to, the transition, if you are comfortable, from HeyMama to your brand new platform that you're going to tell us all about, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. It's been years, and I've always loved your energy and your heart in this podcast. It's been an incredible few years for me of growth, a lot of really having to burn a lot down to rebuild and kind of destroy some of the old narratives that I was holding close and really, I think, start fresh. I have spent the past few years building another company called Katya Libin Co, where I was doing transformational coaching for women, for female founders, and leading masterminds and retreats. And so, as always, the work with women continues, because that's my favorite place to be, is working with incredible heart-led leaders that are trying to elevate the game and supporting them in doing that. And I think after HeyMama, I moved over to the board. I stepped down as CEO back in 2021. And I just had this huge realization that if I could go through the experience of building an entire community and still feel so incredibly alone while I was the CEO, and feel like I didn't know where to turn or where to get the level of support and guidance that I really needed to be the leader I needed to be, that I knew that other women felt that way too, and were probably holding a lot of shame and judgment and overwhelm that they didn't feel safe to share. And so then when I moved over to the board, I kind of felt like I had this child that I was devoting 1,000% of my time to, all of my mind share. And then one day I was like an aunt, or I was like a parent that would visit it at college, So I'd have my quarterly board meetings, but day to day, I needed to step away for my own well-being, for the company's well-being. I just needed to make that shift. And that's the period where I felt like I went through the most profound transformation, because I felt like this huge remembrance of who I was before I took on the title as CEO, and what I thought that all had to mean, and who I embodied during those 7 years. Just started to come back home to my authentic self. And the silly, playful, feminine, free, wild, relaxed, very chill, very easygoing person that I am naturally, who I don't think I was as CEO because of all the pressure that I felt like I was under. And that gave me so much freedom and so much joy. And I felt like my energy was just through the roof, and I kept on cultivating that. And that's what I brought to my coaching. And I would meet with women that were founders and really help them understand the true sacrifices they were making, not with the time that they were spending working, which was a lot more than I think anyone ever realizes when you start your own business, but also the energetic cost and the mindset and the inner game. And that became my focus for the past 3 years, until just recently when I decided to go all in and build Divine Feminine Leader, which I cannot wait to tell you more about. But yeah, it's been wild, and it's been a true experience of what happens when you're willing to surrender to what spirit and the universe wants for you, instead of trying to force and make things happen, which was very much indicative of the first part of my career.
So you've shared two things. You shared that you needed to overcome old narratives, and you also shared that you felt very alone as CEO of HeyMama. Would you mind elaborating on both? What were some of the old narratives, and also, how did you feel? I understand how it feels to be alone amongst a sea of people, but you built the premise of the HeyMama community to not feel alone. So Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think growing up and being in tech before I launched HeyMama, we launched HeyMama, I didn't have any models of what feminine leadership looked like. I was working for very type A alpha men who were, watching over us as we made, hundreds of calls a day and kind of worked at an insane pace to be able to deliver results. So the experience I had of management was that your role was to keep an eye on everyone to make sure that they were A, achieving their potential, B, achieving the goals for the business, and C, always improving. And on the C part, always improving, this also matched up very well with my upbringing with a Russian Jewish mom, where her version of love was like, let me tell you how you can do this better. Let me tell you how you can do this better. Let me tell you that, oh, this was amazing, but this one thing, I just showed her my photo shoot pictures and she's like, your boobs look like they don't fit into that. I'm like, look at this whole photo. It's so beautiful. But yet the one little thing that was wrong was brought up as a sign of love. And so I think I took that to mean that that was a form of management that was really supportive. I'm going to make my team better. I'm going to make my team always be striving for the best. We're not going to stop until we succeed. I'm not going to let people down. And I think through that whole narrative of I'm the CEO, I also took on, I can't show that I don't know what I'm doing at certain points, right? Which I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to. Imposter syndrome, that I didn't feel like I had the safety to really express, right?
Did you ever fake it till you made it?
So much.
Right. I've been there for sure.
I was 28 years old when I started HeyMama.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I was 28 years old, a single mom with a 2-year-old. So
I want to talk more about that too.
I think that's something also, like I was a baby. I had my daughter when I was 26, also a baby. So I really grew up so much. Like I was becoming a woman, a mother, an entrepreneur, a leader.
Yes.
And I started having women work for me that were 10 years older than me with significantly more experience than me. But yet I was the one that was supposed to guide the entire vision and strategy. It was a lot. But I was like, I'm doing this. And what kind of person does this? A person that, is putting in the longest hours, always available, working harder. You remember the old school mentality, first one in, last one out?
Yes.
Like you can't ask anything of your team that you don't do yourself.
Sure.
Well, guess what? For anyone listening to this that has a neurodivergent mind, that has a little bit of ADHD, that is like crack cocaine for someone that can get addicted to work quite easily, right? Because it's addictive. And I think that's the thing that no one talks about is it is so easy and was so easy in that time where we were in this hustle culture. This is pre-COVID, right? Where everyone was just, the women were told that if you just keep on working and you keep on pushing, you're going to get to grow the company and then you're going to have the big, exit or wealth or impact that you want.
Right.
Which coming from an immigrant whose family came here with $300, no language, no money, no generational wealth, nothing to fall back on. Of course, I wanted to build something not just for my prosperity, but for the promise that all these women were joining, and I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to be the reason that we had to shut it down because I didn't hit my number, I didn't do something. So it all came to a lot of like, this is my thing to hold. And that's when that loneliness hit, is that I felt like I was holding a lot of the revenue expectations for the business. And given my previous background in sales, that's, the role that I stepped in. And that was a lot of pressure for me because our team was growing. We took on funding. Now investors wanted to actually, also see the company grow. And who am I going to go to? I'm going to call you and say, hey, I'm feeling a lot of pressure about this business and I don't feel like I know what I'm doing and I feel overwhelmed and I'm overworking. No, because you want to show that you are, a leader. And that's what my version of leadership was at that time. That's the model that I knew. It was a much more masculine form of leadership and
very prideful. It sounds prideful. And did you go through burnout?
Oh my God, so much so. Because I was overworking as well. The boundaries weren't there. I was a single mom, but that meant, 30% of the time I didn't have my daughter. So I was able to work 12-hour days. Sure. Oh, great. You mean now I can work all day long? Like, amazing. I'd love working all day long. I'm a workhorse. I'm also a generator in human design, so we can keep going and going and going. But as I'll tell you more about the power of the feminine, the divine feminine, I mean, it is really it is unlearning everything I learned about work, about leadership, about being a woman, a mother, a partner, and building completely differently now. But it's not surprising to me that the universe was like, you need to step away and let's make all the perfect cosmic forces come together to have this be a mark in the sand for you to break free from that pressure, from those expectations, from the identity I had around that form of leadership of being that CEO. It doesn't mean I wasn't successful publicly, right? I built an amazing brand with an incredible team, but inside, I don't think I was successful. And that's honestly the true markings of success run so much deeper than what you can see on the outside. And that's why I'm such a proponent of the movement that we're building now and the way that I've been coaching women, is because I see too many women stuck in a program that has been fed to us and taught to us and modeled to us that doesn't really reflect the way that we want to move in the world.
Conditioning. So knowing what you know now, what would you do all over again and why?
I wouldn't do anything different because I think that all of my experiences led me to this point, and I love the parts of my story that are messy and feel like even maybe could be thought of as a failure, because you cannot grow without failure. You just can't. That is how you get there. Like if you look at all of the top athletes in the world, I mean, they had to fall on their face 95 times and kept on trying and trying and trying. So I'm grateful for all of those. Were there a couple of things I would have done differently? Yeah, I'm sure in hindsight, I would have grown it differently. And I would have thought a lot differently about the way that I was showing up in that process. But I didn't have that level of wisdom, embodiment, and support then. And I was also going through a lot in my personal life as well, while the world was going through a lot, while my co-founders going through a lot. So everything comes in, when it rains and pours. And I'm so grateful it all shaked out the way it did. But the advice I'd give to someone building a business today would be to really establish what your values and priorities are from the very beginning, and think about when you're starting to see that your values are slipping away because of other forces at play that are trying to dictate what you should do, what it should be, and what you believe you're doing for not disappointing others, but in the process disappointing yourself.
So let's go back to the failure part. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you are first generation American.
No, I'm an immigrant. I was born in St. Petersburg.
You are actually an immigrant. I'm
Yes.
first generation American. So that's not the same, but I understand firsthand some of the things my parents went through. So it's interesting. I didn't live it. So you lived it.
Yes.
Now, going back, was failure even an option? And was that something that you had to recondition yourself around? When you think back to your relationship, what you mentioned with your mom, what was that sort of idea around failure? I'm just curious to know if that was something that you reworked when you said you sort of reconditioned yourself along the way.
Yeah, it's a good question. My mom's a perfectionist. She's impeccable with everything she does. And I think our kids have a natural way of countering whatever we're extreme in. And so I was like on the other side, where I would be in school, and instead of getting 100 and busting my ass, I'd get like a 93 and have fun doing it. So I was always about the experience of something instead of the outcome. And she was much more about the outcome instead of the experience. So if you have to torture yourself to get to perfection, then do it. And I was like, oh no, I want to have fun doing everything. And that, I think, she's always been very supportive, as has my dad been. And so I don't think I was like scared to fail because of them. I think I didn't have an awareness yet that it was safe for me to mess up. I just didn't know that was cool. I didn't know someone could just go into a meeting and be like, hey guys, I like massively messed up and I could take the complete hit for that. And here's how we're going to do it better. at that stage. I still thought that I had to be the one that had all the answers.
That's also very male, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Don't show weakness. You want your team to be confident. And there were so many strengths in the way I was leading because I was able to enroll so many people into the vision for what we were building. I was able to attract the top talent. I raised millions of dollars. And I say I, but we, I'm just talking about from my personal experience. Everything's a team effort. Everything was possible because of the team we had. But the team we had was because Amory and I were able to get people really excited about what we were building. And that excitement level and that passion and that mission, I think, drew a lot of people to HeyMama. Where it started to be a problem was when the inner values, when the actual pace of the work and the pace of how people were working with didn't match up with the values of the company, right? Because we were trying to keep up. And it always felt like we were just behind. And that's what the growth came at the expense of. So the growth came, but at the expense of, I think, a reasonable pace. And it was so normal at that time for people to be working so much at a startup because we were a startup and startups do take that. I think that's where, things really shifted is after I stepped away, the growth actually really plateaued, but the actual experience of probably working at HeyMama probably got significantly better.
I think it's incredibly difficult when you have to be in a position where you're leading, but at the same, it was your baby. It was your and Amory's baby. But at the same time, you brought in shareholders, stakeholders, and you had to answer to them. So that changes the dynamic significantly, doesn't it? I would imagine.
It does. And we had great investors. I think they were all very, very supportive, but I took a lot of pressure on.
Sure.
And, when you're in that role, you're not going to go to one of the members in the community and be like, hey, babe, I'm feeling super overwhelmed. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I actually just sometimes want to crawl under a rock and cry for 3 days because this is all too much. And I feel like I don't have any space to breathe. That's where that loneliness set in and why it's so important for people to find coaches that can really be there in that inner space where you can be so vulnerable and so open and there's no shame. And I don't think I had that really, really safe space at that time. I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to protect the business. I was trying to protect our investors. And there were many moments where I was like, I freaking got this. And then there are so many where I was like, this is unsustainable, but the train has left the station. And now what?
Right. I mean, they say it's lonely at the top for a reason.
Exactly. That's why I'm so committed to building this company differently. And I'm so open about, the ways that I could have been a better boss and a better leader at that time. And I was really, I think that inner game is essential. And we haven't had a lot of models for what relaxed entrepreneurship looks like, for what a relaxed woman looks like. That's not type A, which is an over-index for women feeling like they needed to be that to survive, to get paid equally, to have a seat at the table. So there's been a huge over-index in this masculine energy.
There's a thrill in the overachieving.
Oh, yeah.
I've been there. At the same time, it's recipe for burnout.
100%.
It's not sustainable because it's like living double, triple lives and how you show up. And it does affect, or at least for me, it affected other things like at home. So how did your professional experience affect you at home?
So much. I think for any woman that's had complicated relationships where they've attracted people based on their level of awareness and trauma and what they've been trying to navigate. And that's exactly what happened to me. I kept on seeing the same pattern show up with the men that I was attracting. And being a single mom in New York and a startup founder, I mean, first off, that was in itself a very wild experience. But then trying to date in that while I was taking on so much responsibility at work, and who I was attracting ended up being a pattern of partners that were very intense, very, very intense. And that intensity ended up, I think, really shifting the way that I was expressing myself as well.
And you mentioned controlling before.
Yeah, controlling, verbally abusive, emotionally unsafe. And I know so many women have been through things like that and have been through experiences like that, relationships that felt very toxic and difficult, and where things would just escalate, and you don't have that emotional safety or that place where you felt really heard and understood. So that
Like
was
another job.
Yeah, it really was.
And two engagements, right?
So my first engagement was with my daughter's father, and we were together for the first 2 years of her life. And he's amazing. We're still dear friends, and just such an amazing father to her. And I'm so grateful for that co-parenting journey. He's like a brother to me, to be honest. And then I was a single mom in New York at 28 years old with a startup, meeting people out. They're like, "What? You have a child?" Like, yes, I have a child and I have a company. And I think I just kept on looking for that feeling of safety, and that ended up presenting itself in more of this, type A alpha male that I thought that's what I wanted, right? But in reality, the inner workings of those relationships, they weren't functioning well because I wasn't in my feminine enough. They were too much, and they weren't in their feminine at all. And so the combination of that, when you don't have a lot of feminine energy in a relationship, that's the energy, that's the together energy, the unity, the healing, the pleasure, the listening, the unconditional love. And I was navigating all of that while building the business, which was definitely very challenging.
I can only imagine. And how did this affect your relationship with your daughter? I mean, you think about the premise of HeyMama, it's all about motherhood. It's spending all of this time with your family or being able to. And at the same time, you're building this beautiful community to help other mothers embrace motherhood, whatever that looks like for them. And at the same time, you're working nonstop. So what did that look like at home with your baby girl?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a very present mother, and I've treasured my relationship with my daughter, especially those years that it was just the two of us. And I felt like we got so incredibly close. And I loved the experience of being a single mom. I know not everyone enjoys that, but for me, it was magic. And we're so close because of it. But I do think that there were some challenges in navigating motherhood alone, building the business, and the way to balance that. My solution was, when I didn't have my daughter, I would really kind of work myself to the bone, and that is what I felt like I needed to do to be able to counter when I was with her, being able to be more present, so it wasn't uncommon for me to start working at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., be right on my phone right when I woke up and work till 1 or 2 in the morning just to feel like I could keep up. And that led again to me modeling that for the business, that was okay, that was what I was doing, which led other people to feel like maybe that's what they needed to do, right? Because I was always on. And it's unsustainable, even though in the moment it felt like I'm just driven by my mission. I just love what I do so much. I love this. And that's the narrative that I think a lot of women can tell themselves when they're in a process of overdoing it. It's like, I have to. I don't have enough time. I have to do this. I have to do this. It's like a cycle of that narrative. And it's a very disempowering narrative.
And how, if at all, has your parenting style changed since you've been able to shift your own narrative?
Oh, so much. I mean, I've done so much spiritual work and deep work on myself, and I think I've recognized a lot of the patterns that I've been carrying generationally as well. And overall, I'm trying to be a very relaxed mother that allows for my kid to go through challenges without needing to fix them, right? Which is not something that was modeled to me.
Oh, that is so hard. I understand that so much. And it's painful sometimes to watch and be like, oh, but I know how to fix that.
Yes. And there's a really good framework actually that we're using now in Divine Feminine Leader. It's called, we have a channel in our Telegram called Heard, Hugged, or Helped. And people can go in there and just say, do I want to be heard? Do I want to be hugged? Or do I want to be helped? And I think if everyone went into every scenario with their kids and just asked that question first, and let your kid dictate what they need, and trust and teach them to trust themselves. So a lot of my parenting stayed the same, as that I'm a very like affectionate, loving, generous mom. Like I just love to surprise and delight my daughter and surprise her and take her places and just be like a huge bubble of energy and joy in her life, because she's actually a little bit more, I don't want to say melancholy, but she could be like playing her guitar, writing poetry, like with the rain coming down, listening to sad music. Like she loves that. And I'm on the other end. I'm like Cinderella when I wake up. I'm like the squirrels and the trees and it's a beautiful day. And I'm just so, all of that, by the way, that level of joy was not available to me when I was building HeyMama. There were levels of joy I could access in moments, but day to day, there was not this lightness in my energy because of all the pressure I had. And I think when you're also trying to build a business that's supporting so many women, sometimes you forget to support yourself.
Of course.
Yeah. And that's a very common narrative.
The mission, right? Yeah. It becomes about
It's about the mission. It's about them. It's about them. I can sacrifice so that way everyone is getting what they need. And that, of course, you're going to be shorter and snappier when you're overdoing it. So there was that. I'm sure some people got the short and snappy version of Katya.
I mean, that's natural, right? Especially when you're basically running on fumes at times, right? So heard, helped, or hugged.
Yes.
I love that. And something that I learned when I was going through my own stuff, right? Like my own fertility stuff, I remember that was really the point where I realized that I was very type A, and fixing people was sort of this thing that I love to do too. Because I felt like that was what they needed. And then it actually made me take a step back and say, well, I didn't ask for your advice on, well, why don't you just ... or at least ... And so I think I came to realize like, oh, now I ask, like, do you want my opinion or do you just want me to listen? But I loved this heard, helped, or hugged, because that frames it so succinctly.
Yes. Absolutely. And I have to give credit to one of our chief experience officer, Divine Feminine Leader. Her name is Katya Libin Co, and she shared this framework with me. So I wanted to give her a little shout out, because as soon as I heard it, I was like, ooh, this is good.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing conversation. I just had dinner with my partner last night, and I said, do you prefer when you're going through challenges that I just listen and empathize, or do you like when I come in to try to help you figure it out? And he said, I just love when you listen. I can figure things out pretty well. And it's mind-blowing how much our inability to sit with people's pain causes us to get into a mode of fixing it. And it's partly for love for them, but it's partly because it's so uncomfortable for us.
1,000%, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back to the generational trauma part of it, right? We can have the most loving parents in the world. It's inevitable that something happens, right? That there is something, and it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be abuse or anything, crazy on that spectrum of things. But there are these moments, I think, particularly having parents that are not from this country or have different sort of upbringings, and particularly more of that Eastern mindset. So I would love to hear, through your soul searching, through your re-education, what are some experiences that you've pinpointed that have really shaped what you wanted to change and what you're doing now?
I love that question. You ask such great questions.
Thank you.
There are a couple of things I've noticed that I did not grow up with that I feel really passionately about helping my daughter grow up with. And the first one is teaching girls at a young age how to trust their intuition, how to locate their intuition, how to listen to where it is in their body. When I was growing up, I was actually more taught to listen to someone else for the answer. It wasn't within me. It was somewhere out there. Someone else knew about it. And so what that led, and Libras also are known to like get people's opinions, like we'll like have two options and we'll be like, I don't know, which one is it? I just can't decide. And indecision is a popular like trait of some Libras. And growing up, that indecision was just strengthened. And then of course I come into a role where I'm supposed to make all the decisions. And it's tough. Yeah. So I think something I wish that my mom had the tools around is to let me come to my own wisdom and to help me discover that inner voice from a young age. So many of our parents had no meditation practices or mindfulness practices. We weren't doing breath work, cold plunges. I mean, the world of mindfulness has exploded, where people are coming back to the quantum brain within, and they can actually sit and quiet down and start to connect to an idea or a knowing or a vision. And then they could see that vision happening. That's what manifesting is. And I consider myself like a master manifester. And I cannot believe how much of this was completely unbeknownst to me for my entire upbringing. But that is one thing. It's the intuition. And we get to raise these young goddesses. The second thing is complete unconditional love of my body. I did not have that growing up. Eastern European mothers are very known for being highly critical, saying you could never be too rich or too skinny. That's not an uncommon perception in many cultures, but especially in that one. And it was tough because, both my sister and I struggled with eating disorders. My sister's was much more extreme than mine. I had suffered from different addictions, and this was all in a time where the narrative of unconditional self-love and loving your body, regardless of what it looks like, was not available to me. And that is something that I'm really looking to break the pattern with. I'd say the third thing that generationally is the sisterhood, the safe space and sisterhood. So I did not have a supportive, safe circle, I think, growing up. It's one of the reasons I was so drawn to building community, is because I've always craved the deep sisterhood. Like, I want to be that woman, like, on a commune with like my friends where we like raise our kids together, and we make dinner and we do crafts at night and all of that. That whole idea of just deep closeness with people has always really drawn me, and why I continue to build community is like my life's devotion is always to build community. It's because I feel that true like longevity, happiness, well-being comes from the depth of our relationships. That was not modeled to me. My parents had a group of friends, but then when they divorced, that group of friends really like kind of went with my dad. My mom sort of broke away. And so then that sort of community kind of started to disentangle for me. And I was just kind of on this quest for it. And the women's circle, like the first time I even sat in a women's circle, I was like, who are these witches and what are we doing? I can't believe we're sitting in a circle and it's the full moon. This is so witchy. I never knew about this. And now I've hosted so many of these, and I gather women every month on the new moon and on the full moon. And I see how life-changing it is when women gather in circle. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and it is so potent. And I wish I was modeled that earlier. So those are just 3 things. I could go on, but it's a great time to be a freaking woman.
It is. What I'm also seeing, it's amazing. It's incredibly transformative to listen to and see, because I saw the Katya 1.0. Well, and listen, I didn't know the 1.0. I saw the 2.0, but now I think I'm seeing the 3.0, right?
Hopefully
so
the 5D Katya.
Right. But like I'm seeing this new, more liberated, more free to be me, Katya, that was just, you showed up beautifully before, but very, corporate.
Yes, corporate Katya.
Very, corporate Katya. Very, right?
I like just very on and
you were very on and polished and perfect and you had all the answers and you knew what to do, and strategic. And strategic is not a bad thing. That is a beautiful thing to be strategic. I think what I'm learning too, as I've gone through my iterations of corporateness and non-corporateness, is it's okay to fail. One of my other guests put it so well, find the fun in failure, because we all fail. And sometimes more publicly than others, but when we do fail publicly, I think it's an actual opportunity and not it's not the death, it's just the beginning.
Yeah, and it's funny because what some people might have looked like as a failure to me was a huge success. Because then what happened was I stepped away from HeyMama and everyone's like, wait a minute, you mean you get to still own the business but don't have to do anything for it? And I was like, uh-huh. And they're like, wow, that's the boss move. And so in my mind, I was like, oh my God, what's this gonna look like? I'm no longer the CEO. But for me, it was literally the week after, and I was like floating on air because I was so relieved to not have to carry that anymore. I was exhausted, I was so stressed. And when all of that slipped away, my joy, my bliss, my pleasure, like I'm a very sensual, pleasureful being. Like that's, in past lives, I'm sure I was some sort of like priestess, tantric, like goddess. And my natural way of who I was felt so squelched. And I'll break it down for people in an easy way. Men run on testosterone. So they reproduce that every 24 hours. They're on a 24-hour system. That's why 99% of the studies done are on men. They're very easy to study because they're always the same. Sorry, guys, it's true. Women run on a 28-day cycle. So actually, we are different every single day of the month. Very expensive to run a study on a woman because you cannot get the same woman until you go a whole 28 days to the day, right? That's only 1%, 2% of studies are done on women. And we run on oxytocin. Oxytocin is what makes us thrive. Oxytocin is what we're doing now. It's the process of co-creation, of talking with one another, of creation, period. That's when we feel really alive. And I was so loaded up on testosterone, which we get from accomplishing tasks, moving things forward, checking things off the list, the strategic side, the very masculine side. I was very heavily indexed. So when I was showing up, I was leaning on that because that made me feel confident. And what makes us feel confident allows us not to be as vulnerable. And when we don't want to show up vulnerable, we'll automatically start to pull people into a conversation and a dialogue where we feel the safest. It's all just a protection mechanism.
Sure.
So that's exactly what I was doing. And then went through the transition when I was like, oh, now I'm on the board. And I have like 9 companies in my portfolio that I invested in or advised in, which was a dream of mine. And then I started coaching and I started feeling like work just was so easy. I was in flow. I had so little stress. I made more money than I'd ever made. I had more fun. I traveled. I fell in love. I had the best intimacy of my life. I had all this space and I felt 10 times more successful than I ever did when I was running that business.
So if you could share one message to the entire world, like every single person in the world would hear Katya's message, what would it be?
You are the creatrix of your life. You are the creatrix. We as women, we are constantly creating. We are a living, breathing creation. If we are breathing, we are creating. So we get to set the tone, the narrative, the story. And if we don't, someone will tell our story for us. So it is up to us to tell our story, to own that story, and to then recraft the vision for our life and be so unequivocally committed to that vision. So when I think about being the creatrix, right, as women, we obviously have a portal for creation. We are able to give life. If we so choose to do that, we have that portal. Through that portal as well, there is so much wisdom and knowledge and power. And I talk about pussy all the time because I say that and I think about that in just the most highest reverence for women to connect more deeply to that portal in every way. But when you start honoring your sacral and your pleasure and your desires, you start also honoring that it's safe for you to get what you want. It's safe for you to know what you want. It's safe for you to ask for what you want. The most important thing is that your desires are coming from the heart. They're actually, it's this whole connection, right? We can't just have desire for desire's sake. Sure. Like, okay, I want $1 million I want to have in 3 days and I don't care who I have to stomp on to get there. No, that's not going to work. But when you truly like tap into these different energies in your body, and you're knowing that you can create the frequency, you can create the momentum around you, you can create the vortex around anything that you want, and you believe that, and you move with that intention and that connection, it's insane. Everything's possible to women with just what's hardwired in their bodies. We are wired to win.
Katya, you have become a mystic mama.
Yes.
You have. And it's not lost on me, by the way, that you said creatrix and not creator. That was something that stuck with me. I thought, wow, that's a nice, but it's so amazing to sit with you and have this conversation, because we would have had such a very different conversation.
Yes.
In 2019, 2020, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really fascinating. And it gives me hope, because I think it's sometimes in our lives when we get stuck in the stuff, we sort of lose focus on our spirit.
Oh my God.
Right? Mm-hmm. So how would you recommend to a woman, to anyone, how can people better tap into their spirit when they feel like they have lost it a little bit because they've had to be so focused on the logic and the alpha parts of life?
So something funny that people will say is, oh, I'm not that spiritual. Oh, I'm very spiritual. And the truth is that there is no way not to be spiritual. We are all having a spiritual experience. But some people are more tapped into spirit because they are guided by spirit. I'll put myself in that category. So I am guided by that. I'm guided by the divine feminine. That is a completely new concept that I did not even know was available to me, was to be guided by a connection to something. And we can sidebar on that. But through that listening and through that guidance, I found not only so much freedom and such a magical path that continues to elevate for my highest good at all times. So I always tell people the universe is always optimizing for your highest results at all points. Everyone wants you to win. Everything wants you to win. Everything wants you to succeed. But it's really hard when you don't give yourself the space and time to listen. So I think if a woman wants to feel more grounded, connected, at peace, connected to her pleasure, connected to her clarity, connected to her vision, we have to find the stillness within ourselves in a world that's telling us that we have to do. So the whole system is built around the masculine. Education, medicine, business, everything. That's why I'm building Divine Feminine Leader, because I want, as women, for us to recreate that and to really begin a new era of feminine leadership, which coincides with the Aquarian era, which we just started 10 years ago. We left the Piscean era, which I'll tell you more about, but it makes complete sense when people hear it. And this whole big shift into the divine feminine is available to every woman at any time. It's also available to men who are learning how to balance their masculine and feminine energy. And it comes with practices, journaling, meditation, full moon circle, stillness, finding quiet moments where you are actually asking a question, right? What feels true to me as a next step, right? What am I being guided to next? What feels alive for me in this season? How am I transforming in this, in what I'm doing right now? Like all of these introspective questions, I'll put in a category of contemplation. So as we get older, typically people start having their spiritual experiences in their early 30s. They go to their late 30s, and then in their 40s, they're like, and some of us are waking up at all different times, and then you're like, wow, there's so much that's possible on these different realms when we start to step outside of a human doing machine. And that's really like the simplest form of it. We have to get back to the art of being, which is very feminine. And that art of being means that you're willing to do the radical act of slowing down.
Was there a role model for you?
100%. So many role models. I worked with some incredible coaches in the process of my transformation, but I actually had my spiritual awakening back in 2015. So it happened years ago. I was already reading and meditating all through HeyMama. It wasn't enough, to counter the amount of work that I was doing. But I did start creating a practice for myself every single day. And I think that really helped me, especially. I would do 30 minutes of meditation every day. And I couldn't even function to work without having that grounding in the morning. What I'd say for women that are looking to tap in, there's so many incredible resources right now. Insight Timer is an incredible app for women that want to just get into meditating. Finding a local full moon circle would be a great place. Journaling, right? When you script things out, you're actually putting them into existence. Affirmations, breath work is life-changing. There's just so many portals. But Stephanie Redlener is a woman that had a really big impact on me. She has a company called Lioness. And that was really the first time where I felt so free in my desires and my pleasure. And I was always this really sensual, sexual being from like a young age. And I just never really understood it. I never really understood what I wanted. I never really understood my capacity for pleasure, how to advocate for the pleasure I wanted, and not just in the bedroom, but out of the bedroom, like how to actually design my life around what feels really good. And that was really transformational, and I think helped me just start making what feels good the baseline instead of what feels good being the exception. Yeah, I do think that we're hardwired to be blissful, joyful, dynamic on the regular, and that's the frequency we'll stay at if we're at there more. So I can get into sound. I'm also a sound healer now, so I have a lot that I'm fascinated with sound and vibration, but everything is frequency, everything is vibration. And that's the most powerful knowing that you can find, is that you are going to go back to the frequency you're at the most. So if you're mostly tired and frustrated, you will mostly be tired and frustrated. If you're mostly really like happy and connected to nature and loving, you will bounce back to that much faster. And so that's why everyone talks about, oh my God, I love your vibe. I love your vibe. What's vibe? Vibe is actually like your toric field. It's your energy field. It's your heart has a toric field that could span up to 9 feet wide. And that's what people feel. And that's what collectively as a humanity, we are all trying to elevate our vibration, heal through our trauma, feel more connected, feel more like one, as opposed to feeling more like this is me and this is you, and we are so separate. And that duality, I think, is what leads to so much of the pain and suffering in this world, but also leads so many women to choose safety over connection.
And before anyone thinks that this is like a woo-woo discussion, I also want to sort of earmark that this is actually physics driven, right?
Oh,
the
yeah.
vibrational energy of things and people, right? From rocks to people, everyone has a vibrational energy, some, and even people, lower, higher. And it was interesting. I read a book, which I cannot remember, but it was a physics-led book that shared something to the effect that people with a lower vibrational pole will be attracted physically, you know, just even in terms of spatially, to people that have a higher vibrational energy, so that they can plug in. And it's funny, I think living in New York City, think about it, like the times where you're sitting, it doesn't happen anymore, but well, maybe it will again because the subway system is crazy. But remember being on a subway and being like the only person in the car, or like one of a few people, and someone comes sit right down next to you, or like you're on a street going like sideways to the other side of the road, and someone will just like bump into you. You're like, how did you bump into me over here? I'm going diagonal, everyone else is going straight. And it's an interesting idea. Do you believe in that, first of all? Do you believe that people sort of manifest this energy naturally, and that there's a way to change your vibrational energy?
Oh my God, 100%. I've completely shifted my vibrational field.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've always been pretty charismatic and like dynamic with people, but I think there's a level of love and freedom and bliss that is much more my baseline now. That is based on me being able to know how to alchemize fear, pain, worry, frustration. So none of those feelings stay with me very long. Because I know they're not reality. I know that there are something that's trying to convince me of something I should be scared of or worried about or ego. And now I have the tools within me to be able to take that, to have a seed of awareness over it, and then to transform that back into something that feels powerful and lighter, and choosing back into love. Choosing back into love is really the way of a spiritual being. And that's actually something that's across every single religion and across everything. It all comes back to that. And that's what we could all take with us within each moment. When you're starting to feel any sort of pain, it's usually from a resistance to reality. And through that resistance to reality, through an expectation or an attachment to how something should be, instead of just being like, what is this here to teach me? What is this here to show me? This is the most frustrating thing. This is my best teacher. And I'm grateful for this exact thing because this is going to allow me to transcend into something else. So you shift your vibration by not being in the muck all the time. You're not like, oh, someone cut me off and then my coffee spilled on me, so guess what? My day's ruined. No, sister, that means your 10 minutes were ruined. Your bounce back gets to be 10 minutes. You can listen to a great song, close your eyes, tap into your heart, find things you're grateful for, and shift the entire trajectory and have the best day ever if you choose to. Or you could choose to let that be the beginning of a deeper spiral about how things are happening to you. So a lot of what I did over the past 3 years when I was building Katya Libin Co. is I taught conscious leadership because I felt like I was an unconscious leader. And so coming into the awareness of consciousness, I learned about to me versus by me versus through me versus as me leadership. And in those different scenarios, you go from being a victim to being to being a person that's looking at everything in curiosity. That alone will get you out of the lower frequencies. But, a consistent mindfulness practice and supportive community of people around you and expanding your friendships and your relationships and yourself, that's just something every person could and should be doing so that they can continue to be on the process of expansion, which is our natural state of creating and expanding at all times.
You have created this beautiful, divine, feminine leader community and brand and collective. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what your goal is with all of it?
Yes, I'm so beaming about this vision. This really started because I believe women right now are at the precipice of a new era of leadership, a new era of living. We're in this Aquarian era, which is very heart-led and very collaborative. And it's a time for women to come together and shift the frequency of the world. It's been heavily indexed in the masculine. And so we have all these women that have been growing and learning. And now we are in a time to integrate and to co-create. And so our mission at Divine Feminine Leader is to help divine women co-create wisdom, power, and wealth. We are creating the 13 principles of divine feminine leadership, which we teach within the Collective 64, which is the name of this membership. And our members are heart-led, bold, visionary creators. They're women that are creating things in their lives, but they don't want to do it alone. They want deep sisterhood. They want friendships. They want to share their wisdom. They themselves have had so many stories that they've picked up and so many things that they excel at. So it is really a home for women to work together and to learn and play in a very safe, loving environment. So we've taken a few things from like a YPO model where you have your monthly forum where you meet with a group of people every month. So we do that as well, but we actually personally match everyone based on their human design and their gene keys and their life's purpose. And we personally match every woman with a group of 7 other women. It's called your Infinity 8. And you stay with that group for the entire year and you meet with them every month. And then throughout the month, we come together for new moon ceremonies every month. We connect every day on Telegram. And it's just been incredible because I think women are ready to go deeper. And it's 64 women in each collective is the max. So it's a large enough group where you're getting to really connect and get to know people, but also that intimate, safe space where you could really not show up with the masks and not show up with the ego and just really be in a place to receive, which is one of the principles of divine feminine leadership. And something that women have historically been having a hard time with is the process of receiving and nurturing themselves because they're so used to taking care of everyone else. So yeah, we are really pumped for what the Collective 64 can create in the world. And we hope that the women within it have the support to continue to innovate and disrupt and create companies and missions and communities that are more wired to honor the divine feminine. And it's going to help us raise the next generation of much more heart-led, healed children that are seeing their mothers being women that value themselves, that take great care of themselves, and that are taking the time and the space to really create a blissful life by choice, by creating it, not by anything being handed to us or anyone having a perfect life. It's by our ability to take this, radical ownership of the world we want to live in and create that world.
And is this an annual class system? Like every year you'll have like one class, like the class of 2024, 25, or will you keep building on those classes, or will it just be one group that if one spot becomes available, someone comes in? Like, how is that working?
Great question. So our vision is to have 64 collectives of 64 all over the world. So we might have like a collective 64 in Morocco or in Hong Kong or in Singapore or in another part of the country. Right now, the collective it's nationwide, so we have members across, mostly New York, LA, Miami, and a couple of others. It's an annual membership. It is application-based. You have an interview with one of our founding team, and then you're a part of the collective for the entire year. And then at that point, you can renew into the collective. So you don't have to leave. It's not like a course where you come and learn and go. It's something that we think people are going to stay with their collective. And we're doing some incredible experiences together, like going to the south of France. This June, we're going to see Elderbrook. We go see live music, retreats. So it's online, but it's also definitely a rich network offline that you want to, expand your friendships. And I think a lot of women, if they were honest, have felt like they've outgrown some of their friends, not because their friends aren't amazing, but as people, we are changing and expanding at all times. And sometimes who we were then when we started to be friends with those people is different than who we are now. And it doesn't mean we love them any less. It just means that having new, fresh energy and women that you can connect with on a different level allows you to go deeper so much faster. And that is what it seems like most women are craving, is that deeper level of support and sisterhood.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we're excited.
I'm excited for you for your collective 64.
Thank you.
So do you have any parting words for our listeners?
Yes. I would say that the parting words are to be the love of your life and to continue to treat yourself like the main character in the most epic film that you've ever seen. And using every day as an opportunity to think about, like, okay, what would she do today? How would she eat? How would she dress? What sort of invitations would she accept, right? How can you move as a work of art yourself? Because I really believe every human is their own work of art, and our expression of how we show up is an art form. But it first stems with being the love of your life, like flirt with life, flirt with yourself, fall back in love with yourself, and know that is your responsibility to have that inner turn on and joy and purpose and all of this alignment. It first comes from this unconditional acceptance of the dynamic, perfectly flawed human being that you are today.
Katya, thank you so much. I am so grateful that you were here with me today.
I'm so grateful to be here. This was such a delicious chat. I'm so, so thankful.
Thank you. Thank you. Come here. Love you.
Love you too.